Good morning, everybody. Good morning. We got a bright, crisp, nice morning here in New York. No better place to be. Let me start by also recognizing some very important people. You know, when you're in somebody else's borough, I got my passport to come over, so I had a conversation with our good friend, my good friend, and the president of the borough of Manhattan, Gail Brewer. We're also joined by Assemblywoman Joanne Simon. And you know, I didn't want to be lonely, so I had to get one of my folks from Queens to come with me. So Rory Lansman, City Councilman. We have an individual who's doing tremendous work. You know, he's always got to have someone to counsel. The counsel to the governor, Alphonso David. I have to give, I know y'all heard the voice of God when it came in, but anytime you have your colleagues who are traveling with you, you got to give them special recognition. You know, the Congressional Black Caucus is having a retreat here, our political action team. So I just have to acknowledge first myself, because number one, you know, we've got seniority in DC, and you got to make sure, and when we go over, we take care of them. Eddie Bernice Johnson, and we win the House, she'll be the chair of Science and Technology. Person who does all of the rules, Alcee Hastings, former federal court judge. A judge himself from North Carolina, now doing law in Washington, D.C., G.K. Butterfield. A preacher, a mayor, now a congressman doing the work, Reverend Emmanuel Cleaver. I was going to say something else, his cousin. And of course, representing the Virgin Islands, but I tell everyone she's really from Brooklyn, Stacey Plaskett. And a special thank you to all of the advocates and community leaders that are here with us today. Because, you know, sometimes every morning you got to wake up now and you look and you got to figure out what's going on because somebody's doing something crazy or doing something crazy. But I want you to know that, and you know who that is from 1600, the Congressional Black Caucus is committed to ensuring that black communities and other marginalized communities in the United States have the opportunity to achieve the American dream. Our mission has never been more important than it is today. We have faced unprecedented challenges from the administration in Washington, D.C. that wants to turn back the clock and put all of our communities at risk. Today, the reason we are here, we are coming together to protect the progress that we've made and to continue to move this nation forward, not backward, forward. And to go forward, I don't think, and I know there's nowhere more appropriate for us to host this retreat, particularly in this time, than today, right here, this event in my home state, New York. But especially now, because New York has leadership that all can follow. Under Governor Cuomo's leadership, New York State has been a beacon of progress for the entire nation. And our governor, my governor, is leading the way on the most pressing issues of our time, from combating the scourge of gun violence, to implementing criminal justice reform, to expanding access to education and opportunity for all of our young people. Now, with the Supreme Court nominee, who threatens to take this nation backwards, we will continue to look forward, and we will continue to work with our governor, the governor of the great state of New York, as he continues to lead the way forward. My friends, it is my honor and it's indeed my pleasure, and I ask all of you to welcome a friend of mine. I gotta say, he's from Queens too, folks. He is the 56th governor of the great state of New York, the Honorable Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning to all of you. And it is a special morning. It's a very important topic, and we have very important guests. So welcome to the Congressional Black Caucus. We're very pleased that you're here. We're very proud to host you, and you are our hope. And we are with you 100% in this battle that you're going to wage in November to protect American values. That's what November is all about, protecting American values. To my brother from Queens, Congressman Greg Meeks, who's doing a great job. Let's give him a round of applause. For the other members of the CBC, Congressman Meeks several times mentioned Queens, mentioned passport. These are all little allusions to the New York culture. Queens is an outer borough. Brooklyn is an outer borough. The Bronx is an outer borough. Staten Island is an outer borough. There is no inner borough. There are only outer boroughs. Now, see, Gail Brewer raised her hand. Because the little secret is there actually is an inner borough, although they don't want to call it an inner borough. The inner borough is Manhattan. And everybody else is an outer borough. So when you come into Manhattan, you need a passport to come into Manhattan because you're coming into the inner borough. So you have to apply to President Gail Brewer to come in. And they only allow a certain amount of Queens people to come in at any one time, because they don't want to oversaturate Manhattan. But it's a pleasure to be with the CBC members. Brings me back to my old days in Washington, where we did a lot of work together. I worked with Congressman Cleaver when we were at Department of Housing and Urban Development. I told him he's gotten younger and better looking, and I did the exact opposite. Alcee Hastings, who is a legend from Florida and has been an inspiration for so many. It's an honor to be with you. G.K. Butterfield, pleasure to have you with us. We have Jerry Nadler, our friend and our champion from the inner borough of Manhattan. Pleasure to be with you. Let's give him a round of applause. Eddie Bernice Johnson from Texas, who we look forward to seeing as chairperson. Congratulations. We thank you for being here. And, you know, there is a certain honesty as to what's going on. It's a disturbing honesty, but Congressman Meeks said every morning you wake up and there's another trauma. And that's true. Every week for the past 18 months, it seems like there's a weekly assault on democracy. And I was viewing these almost as random acts, a series of random acts that just seemed outrageous. And you couldn't even get your head around it. And certainly, as a New Yorker, it's repugnant to everything we believe, everything we are. And then I was listening on TV to one of the talking heads after the Judge Kavanaugh nomination. And one of these talking heads, not on my brother's show, because my brother doesn't have talking heads. That's a deep intellectual dialogue on my brother's show, and I want you to know. And all the CBC members, I'm sure he's invited you. It was a different show. But one of the conservative talking heads who was sort of very boastful about this nomination of Kavanaugh said, the people of the United States have to get over it. Elections have consequences. And we elected a pro-life president. And that's what he's going to do. He's going to enact pro-life policies. And it dawned on me, these are not a series of random episodes. We elected an extreme conservative president who was dedicated to an extreme conservative agenda with an extreme conservative Congress. That's what it is. And there's no randomness. It is a pattern of extreme conservative movements, and they are following through on their agenda. They are anti-immigrant, they're anti-labor, they're anti-women's right to control her own body, and that's what they're doing. They are pro-gun, they are pro-corporation, they are pro-wealthy and rich, and that's what they are doing. And the shocking thing is their brazenness about it and how unabashed they are. Well, what about good government? What about balance? Forget good government, forget balance. They're there to carry forward an agenda, and that's what they're doing, and they're going to do everything they can to execute their agenda, period. When it comes to the Supreme Court, that is a great way to execute their agenda. You don't have to deal with the Congress, you don't have to deal with the Senate. Just put your person, your believer on the Supreme Court, and they can enact all the policies. It's probably the greatest executive authority are the appointments to the Supreme Court. Bypasses the entire legislative process, besides the confirmation. And they've elected to nominate Judge Kavanaugh. And he is reading from their script. They put out a list, 25 conservatives. Everyone had a right to sign off. And they are all going to carry forward this extreme conservative agenda. That's what they are going to do. And that is what they believe they were elected to do. It is going to be devastating for this country. It's devastating for the Democratic Party because we believe in the exact opposite of everything they believe in. But I'm sure if Judge Kavanaugh winds up on the Supreme Court, you can say goodbye to affordable health care. You can say goodbye to Roe v. Wade and a woman's right to choose. You can say goodbye to any immigrant right cases that come by the Supreme Court. And you can say goodbye to any sensible gun control that any states have put in place. Judge Kavanaugh is clear on guns. And the purpose of this morning is, yes, we've been talking about Roe v. Wade and we've been talking about other issues. But we also have to look at Judge Kavanaugh on guns. His opinion has been clear. He has written clear, blatant statements that says his opinion, his interpretation of the Heller case, which is the last Supreme Court case on guns, that it is unconstitutional for localities, for states, to ban semi-assault weapons. That is his position. He dissented in the case where they allowed the District of Columbia a ban on the possession of semi-assault weapons, but he dissented. What does that mean? That means you take a state like New York, where we passed the SAFE Act. We passed the SAFE Act after Sandy Hook in Connecticut. Sandy Hook in Connecticut was one of the first mass school shootings. And Connecticut obviously is our neighboring state and had a profound effect on New York. And we stood up and we said, enough is enough. We saw nothing happening in Washington and we said, we're not going to wait on Washington anymore. We're going to act here in New York. And we passed common sense gun control. The very bill that we are still talking about Washington passing today. What's common sense? Ban assault weapons. Nobody goes hunting with an assault weapon. Nobody violates the law in New York to hunt with an assault weapon. Nobody hunts with a semi-automatic rifle. No more than 10 bullets in a clip. Why? Nobody hunts with more than 10 bullets in a clip. And limiting the number of bullets in a magazine is the opportunity for law enforcement to at least have a chance to rush in on a mass murder situation. It's those few seconds where the person has to change the magazine. At least you give that law enforcement officer a chance to reach them and a chance to save their own lives. We closed the gun show loophole, and we set up a mental health database that said we should make sure that people who are mentally ill don't buy a gun. This is common sense. Who would sell a gun to a person who's mentally ill? So we set up a mental health database to cross-check with the NICS database. Since we passed the SAFE Act, there are 77,000 names on the mental health database. This is 77,000 people who could have bought a gun. Just think about this. It's 77,000 people who could have bought a gun the day before the SAFE Act was passed because there was no mental health database check. And now there's 77,000 people who are mentally ill who can't buy a gun. That's what the SAFE Act did. Judge Kavanaugh goes to the Supreme Court. His vote can overturn the SAFE Act. Now, it's total hypocrisy by the conservatives because one of the rules in the conservative gospel, Old Testament, was states' rights, limited federal government. Remember when they talked about that? Limit federal government, limit those bureaucrats in Washington. We need small government. That's what they used to yell about. And give the power to the states, because the states are closer to the people and the states know better. That's what they used to yell about. Now they're in control of the federal government. They did a 180. Now they're an activist federal government that should impose their views on lifestyle, religion, guns on the nation. They will overturn the SAFE Act. In New York, we need to do the exact opposite. We need to keep building on common sense reforms. The next common sense gun reform is what we call extreme protection order, a red flag bill. We're about 200 days into the new year. There have been 184 mass shootings in 200 days, okay? This is a public health crisis. It's an American crisis. You look at these mass shootings, you look at these school shootings, and you hear the same story in every case. The teacher, the school will say, we knew that young person had issues. We knew there was a problem. We knew the lights went out and people were in the dark. But somebody leaned against the light switch. Think we're in the White House for a second, because we're in the dark. The teachers will say, we knew there was a problem. Parents will say, we knew there was a problem. But they had no ability to do anything. What the red flag bill says is give the teachers, give the school administrator, give the parents the right to go to a judge and say, we think this young person has issues. Judge, you please do a hearing. Judge, you please protect their rights. We're not trying to infringe on the rights of the young person. You have a hearing. You do due diligence. but we think the young person may be dangerous, and the access to guns should be limited. The White House saying the answer to school shootings is to give teachers guns is ludicrous. The answer to school shootings is give a teacher who has some knowledge and ability to step in before the violence happens, and that's what the red flag bill does. I want the New York State Senate, the Assembly supports the bill. I want the New York State Senate to come back to Albany and pass the red flag bill now, before the Supreme Court decisions are made. I want to have it in state law. I want to make it so they have to overturn a state law if they're going to actually trample states' rights. So the state senators should come back now and pass the red flag bill. State Senate has to come back anyway because they have to pass a bill codifying Roe v. Wade, so we have a state law. In this state, like many others, we were relying on Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade is overturned. The New York state law does not offer women the same protection that Roe v. Wade offers. So we need a New York state law codifying Roe v. Wade. We also need the Senate to come back and pass speed cameras, which are about to expire July 25th, which have saved lives in front of schools. For them not to come back is one of the most gross distortions of their responsibility. They will literally put young people's lives in jeopardy if they don't renew those speed cameras. So they have to stop playing political games and remember they actually represent the people and they're in a responsible position. And we want them to do that immediately. New York, we're proud, as the congressman said. We think on a lot of these issues we have led the way. We think that is the New York legacy and the New York tradition. We fancy ourselves the progressive capital of the nation. Women's rights movement started here. The workers' rights movement started here. The civil rights movement started here. $15 minimum wage was first passed by this state. We passed the best paid family leave program, passed free college in this state for middle-class families. So we're trying to be the alternative state to Trump's America. And we're trying to prove that reality. The U.S. Senate must do everything they can to stop the nomination of Judge Kavanaugh. It's that simple. And to the CBC, I say not just welcome, but this is a state that is a 100% ally of your cause. We always have been, we always will be. This president has to be stopped. The only way to stop the president is by taking back the Congress and taking back the Senate. If you have an extreme conservative president and an extreme conservative Congress and an extreme conservative Senate, you can't stop the freight train. You can throw things on the tracks and maybe slow down the freight train, but you can't stop it. We have to get control of the Congress, and we have to do it this November. The past year and a half has shown how much damage these people can do. We cannot allow them another 2 years of taking this nation backwards. The people get it. The people in New York get it. We have to mobilize, we have to organize, and we have to make it a reality, and we are 100% committed to doing that with you. We have total respect for what you do, and we are friends and allies. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Governor Cuomo. I'm proud to be here with the governor and with so many of my extraordinary colleagues in the House to speak out for our values. Thank you to all the members of the Congressional Black Caucus as well for being here in New York today, and welcome to my congressional district. The CBC is a critically important body that is fighting tirelessly, not just for minority communities, but for our American values of equality, opportunity, and justice, all of which are under attack in Washington as never before. The Trump administration has repeatedly sought to undermine everything in which we believe. And now, with the nomination of Judge Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court, President Trump is attempting to fundamentally shift the balance of our highest court, with potentially devastating consequences for New Yorkers and for all Americans. If Judge Kavanaugh is confirmed, what is at stake are not just the legal protections of our lifetimes, but for generations to come, on issues ranging from voting rights to civil rights, to women's reproductive rights, to immigration, to gun violence, to environmental regulation, to economic regulation, to putting restraints on the monarchical pretensions of an out-of-control president. Our future is at stake. I have urged our colleagues in the Senate to reject this nomination, and it is critical that we all continue to raise our voices and stand up to this nomination. We cannot let this be business as usual, because otherwise, for generations to come, we will be suffering from the consequences. Here in New York, and at all levels of government, we are committed to fighting back. I know that this state will continue to set a progressive example for the entire nation to follow, and I thank Governor Cuomo for his leadership in doing so. So I thank the governor, and I thank all of you, and I urge a great retreat. Thank you very much.
So as we conclude, you see, we're all in this together. We're all in this together. And one of the things that we should mention, you know, we're proud of New York. And we're proud of the fact that when we talk about and why we've got to stop this judicial nomination is because when you talk about rolling back Roe v. Wade, but also rolling back voting rights, rolling back civil rights, rolling back gun rights, why this election is more important and important for us, because Jerry Nadler, not only is he the congressman here, but we went back to the House, will be the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, fighting and making sure we get the right laws for our country. And we will continue, under the strong leadership of our great governor, to make sure that New York continues to lead and be the first, the most progressive state under the most progressive governor that we've had. I want to thank each and every one of you for being here, for we are in this together. We will do it for the people, because that's what this is all about. It is for the people of the United States of America. Thank you for being here. God bless.